This image comes from the Wellcome Trust, some of their archival collections of early anatomical drawings, and I think gives you a really good insight also into the level of accuracy that was going on in early anatomical drawings of the female body. So it was a very important image to me, kind of as part of the, I suppose, the photography and the pictures behind what was happening with the writing as well. So yes, this book is called Speculum, and I'm going to just start with reading and then I'll say a little more about it afterwards. Juice. I might have put the wrong order for you, Aaron. Juice, which is different, might be, sorry. I'm absolutely certain that's my fault. Maybe it's not there, but I'll read it anyway, and then you can, and then I'll move on to the archive next. So, juice. All through Tuesday, the air smelled like one big orange slice, as if I could dip my fingers in the bedroom wall and bring them back coated in syrup. I could eat all the oranges I wanted. I was 21 and home for the summer, and my dad was dead, and love was oranges and the dark red postbox rusting on the corner of the street. And I was pregnant by mistake. It was like I was sick and oranges were the cure. Oranges and women's magazines with names like Time for a Break and Chat that had spa day giveaways next to headlines like Drugged and Raped by Jack the Ripper's Ghost and Married to My Mother and My Amazing Sex with a Wall, that I could skim while I pressed my thumbnail into another orange globe. I didn't even need to look up to make a hole big enough to suck out all the juice. I could just put my mouth to the rind and keep going until there was nothing left inside. And I'm sorry, Aaron, if I accidentally wrote that in my notes, but not in yours. The next poem I'm going to read is called An Archive. And I'm actually really glad that Speculum comes out on the 31st of October, because it's kind of full of ghosts and it's all about haunting, but not necessarily in the fun Halloween sort of sense of haunting, but more in the poemy sense of haunting. And I think, as well as being an unpleasant medical tool, speculum, the word also refers to a kind of telescope or a hall of mirrors where you can look outwards and backwards and also reflect inwards on yourself. And that strange telescopic, slightly warped quality is something I've been trying to capture in this book, of looking back to others in history and then looking back inwards too. And this collection tries to do all of that, and it's definitely haunted and inflected with the stories and the histories of others, and with other women, and with, I suppose, the gaps and the white space and the silences in the official textbooks and in the medical histories and in the anatomical drawings. And it certainly directly engages a lot with archival material too, so particularly the Wellcome Trust, which I'd really recommend if anyone's interested in bodily writing, going and having a look. And it's, I suppose, concerned with the archives of gynecology and medical progress. And this next poem, An Archive, introduces this haunting, and it introduces the process too. And also the fact that these poems are kind of trying to attempt to create a sort of alternative archive themselves. And I'm very thankful to Poetry Birmingham, the amazing Poetry Birmingham, for publishing some of the poems in this particular kind of archival collection. And for Naush and Sunna for pushing me to keep going with this particular topic as well. And it forms a really important part of the book. I just kind of, to paraphrase J. Bernard's reflection in their note to The Amazing Surge, I am haunted by history, but I haunt it back. An archive, named extreme cure, or on the misnomer of the term heroic medicine. There is a rolling stack dedicated to the wax each child dons to face the crowned light. Cabinets for all the coaxed substances, colostrum, milk, placenta, the shed lining of a womb. A microfilm that discusses how blood can cover a table and a floor without the presence of a blade. One file records how pushing is its own emetic, during and later, gingerly, amidst a fractured tailbone and each raw wound. There is a city of death certificates, with new tower blocks built every year, and a room with an ancient projector that loops a film on how the women used to midwife and still do. 30 hours of work produces 48 centimeters of balling result, of vellum skin tucked into its proper place. See in this file, this spooling marvel of vernix and flesh. Now, when I was pregnant with my daughter 5 years ago or so, I suffered from extreme morning sickness, and which I'm terrible at pronouncing, but it's the name of this poem, Hyperemesis Gravidarum. And it's not just like a little bit sick, it's really, really, really sick, and kind of you're incapacitated, you're in hospital, you're bedbound, you lose yourself. And I know a lot of women, and kind of since writing these poems, I've heard a lot more stories of people who also had it during their pregnancies. And yeah, it's not fun, but it was kind of one of the inspiring factors of getting this book started, really. So this is the first time I've read this one out, and it tries to capture a little something of the essence of it for you. Hyperemesis Gravidarum. Ignore the Smirnoff Black balanced on a headstone. Don't take into account the whiskey in a water bottle at lunchtime. Labels can be picked off in longing. Other people's butts get reborn behind the garage. We're in the morning after the night before, and there is no water near the bed. And you remember the meat falling off the doner like a dress, that gluey pie, all the wet throats. And it is dangerous liaisons, why syphilis and gonorrhea have returned to haunt Britain, while strangers push their tongues to the back of your throat, the unwatered breath. But labels can be picked off in longing. Don't sweat the muscular hollows of your heart or a bad joke. And there's the saliva again, and there's the raw pork in the pan, the foreskin facials on Groupon. You chat briefly to a co-worker about waterboarding before going back to your desk. The school pays a visit to the abattoir. It is still there, rotting in the fridge. You're a yellow streak of piss. The bin smell on a Thursday, and I'm all nosegays and chewing gum and ginger, and I'm going to brush your teeth again. It is swilling, it is swallowing, it is owning up, it is queasy. I'm practicing all the words, like bilious and viscera and qualms and burdens, for the smell of his body, because sometimes labels can be picked off skin. It is his time this time. It is your body. It is all in your belly. It is all in your womb. It is all in your mind. It is all in your mouth. The first poem of this collection was Howarth 1855. It's where it kind of all started, and it was actually the only poem I think that I managed to write, or maybe one of the only ones I managed to write while I was sick. And it all came about, I'd been bedbound for probably like 2 months or something, and I finally kind of was able to get the energy to go to Leeds, where I was working at the time. And I should say I wasn't able to work. I had to kind of leave my job, everything like that. So it was all a bit difficult, but I was able to go back to Leeds and to visit Stand magazine, which is kind of how I got started on poetry to begin with, and hang out at Stand. And being in Leeds, you can't really escape the Brontes as well. They're sort of everywhere. And I kind of sat down in the room and just jotted down a few words of this, and it became this poem. And Charlotte Bronte she's officially recorded as having died of pneumonia, but actually there's been quite a lot of new writing on the idea that she probably died from extreme morning sickness. And certainly this quote from Elizabeth Gaskell in her biography of Bronte gives an indication of the cause of her death. Martha tenderly waited on her mistress, and from time to time tried to cheer her with the thought of the baby that was coming. I dare say I shall be glad sometime, she would say, but I am so ill, so weary. Then she took to her bed, too weak to sit up. Long days and longer nights went by, still the same relentless nausea and faintness. It was already there, yes, in those bone-cold classrooms, in the chants of Homo hominis homini drifting out between the iron bars. But this is different. This is slow. This is fragile. This is all sighs and rustlings, retching and sobs. Loneliness, I now know, is guttural. I dare say I'll be glad when it's over, but as it is, I feel like I've been cleaved. Stomach, lungs, throat frayed like a caught seam, mind spooling on the floor. Under night's cloak, beds slip their posts, sheets tie themselves in knots, pillows calcify and crumble to a fine dust. I wake each morning hot, threadbare, my linen twisted, this makeshift body kept in place by the smallest dart of nerve, this makeshift heart still in my ear. I dare say, though, that I'll be lighter in a month, but in my throat there's a bitterness that will not shift. My teeth are birds' eggs crunching under coach wheels. My tongue is torn cocoons on garden lawns. My lips the dull skin of a cobra coiled behind museum glass. But I shall be glad sometime. I'll forget the smell of an egg yolk, the slimy warmth of butter as it runs across my tongue. I'll want other things than unripe plums and blackberries green and hard as stone. In 2 months, I'll see the white heather, the dappled breasts of Merlin, shelled apple. My eyes will catch the windchat flushed and bolting from its thicket bed. In a year, I'll feel the backwards pull of a skirt hem through tangled gorse, the sharp embrace of a bramble hedge. As I lie here, soft and raw as dough, I know tomorrow will prove infinitely brighter. Even now, I can almost feel your uncut letter in my hand. Certainly an example of starting with someone else as a way of understanding what was going on inside. I was talking with my friend, another poet, about which poems to read today, and she suggested this one, I think partly because of the Halloween theme, something a little bit lighter, but with the kind of characteristic darkness that I like in all of my poetry. Ghost Therapist. You'll never be happy at the same time. I hiss through the extractor fan. Old desires grow up like grass from the garden that contains my dismembered corpse. At any given moment, I am never like a ghost. I'm either a ghost or I am just a voice in the walls of your skull. You could just change, I whisper from inside the microwave at the second before it pings. Today, your baby is a beautiful knife. Next week, he'll be something else to flay you. I can tell you all about it if you'd listen. And now another one about haunting again, I suppose, about other literary voices. Emily Dickinson keeps writing me love letters with tiny black peonies where each tittle should be, and exclamation marks at the end of every other sentence. I am so excited. I am so sad. Emily Dickinson keeps declaring. She writes long passages about the varying properties of roots and then follows it with things like, my heart is made of ringing bells, and we are a basket of herbs bound tight in God's twine. And I don't know what to think. And all the while, the dogs are outside barking to be let in, and it hasn't stopped raining in 17 days. Each time I go to look up oscillation, another dried sprig falls out of the dictionary, and I remember just how long there still is to go. Last week, when I opened the kitchen window, at least 13 dead ladybirds fell onto my hand. And if that isn't a sign, then I don't know what is. The poem I'm going to end on is a little bit happier, but before I finish, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Aaron for believing in this collection and working on it and editing it beautifully, and inviting me to be part of the Broken Sleep family of authors, because it's an amazing group of people. And as kind of I think shown tonight, it's been really fantastic to read with Scott and Morag and Greg and Phil and Luke, so thank you very much for having me. Portrait of a pregnant sonnet. Think of me not as a prison, but as a beautiful house where all the doors and windows are bolted and everybody else has the key. I go to workshops to meet editors who touch my body and tell me I need to eat more words. I stay up late scrolling message boards for signs that I'm labored, that the relationship between my form and content is all wrong. At the sonnet class, all the other sonnets know how to behave. The perfect couplets sit in a circle and smile at each other, while I just keep saying to myself that opinions are like falters. Everybody has one. But when I go swimming, I submerge my feet and suddenly I'm wordless, free of syntax, unformed. Diving under, I roll my body over in a question mark and exhale. Thank you very much.